I'm really excited for everyone to join here. We have this amazing panel and just fun is maybe it's a Friday fun day. So I just wanted to start with a little bit about NFTs for anyone who is new. It stands for non-fungible token, unique and non-interchangeable. So I think of NFTs from a technological lens. They represent tokenized digital assets plus proof of ownership plus money channels baked in. And you'll see sort of NFTs of all kind. There's art, music, in-game, VR parcels, real world business assets like real estate, scientific papers, and even liquidity positions. So our topic of what's possible with NFTs is fairly large. And with this stellar lineup, it's going to be hard to cover everything, but I think we have some really fun topics today to cover. We're just going to start with a quick intro from all our panelists. Maybe we'll start with with Molly, and then people pleaser, and then Billy. Just a brief intro to give people some context. You can also talk about when you learned about, how you learned about NFTs. So maybe Molly, kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. So I work on IPFS, Filecoin, libp2p, and run kind of our engineering team at Protocol Labs working on those protocols. And so my connection to the NFT space is usually at kind of the level that you were just hearing from Alan around how do we make sure that when we're addressing NFTs that we're not losing those or breaking the links to the data and metadata that makes up an NFT, and that we're storing that and making it accessible long-term without reliance on a lot of central parties, and being able to do that in a really resilient way to all sorts of faults or mistakes. And that really comes from kind of the longer space and longer mission of kind of what IPFS and Filecoin are aiming to do here in the Web3 space. But yeah, I first learned about NFTs back in the CryptoKitty days, so I was not early here, but I was hearing about that, and I'm a huge cat lover and was like, this sounds amazing. I definitely want to own my own cat Neopet that lives on the blockchain. That sounds like the future I want. But I was looking for that that platform, that space where I could actually go and interact with it. And I think the team actually moved on at Dapper to go and build some of these games where you could actually take these crypto NFTs, these identities, and you could move them around into different spaces. And I thought that was so exciting to be able to use things like peer-to-peer networking, content addressing to say, take your favorite Neopet from one video game to another video game into your favorite virtual world. It's like, wow, this is the metaverse. It's starting, it's happening here. And so just really excited at all that we can do kind of from a technical level, and the infrastructure and tools we can build like NFT.storage or guides, best practices, things like that to enable the amazing creators and artists and folks who are actually making that future of the web exist, so that they can do it more effectively. So that's how I fit into this field, here at this world.
Hey everyone, I'm People Pleaser. I am a digital artist who frequently collaborates with a lot of DeFi protocols, and also I guess maybe am more known for making that Uniswap V3 animation and consequently selling it as an NFT, in which we raised 310 Ethereum for charity. And then also a DAO was formed to purchase the piece, which is now called Pleaser DAO. And when I first heard about NFTs, similarly, actually, I heard about it. I think the initial point was probably from CryptoKitties, but I obviously had no idea what NFTs even were at the time. Just thought, oh, it was like kind of cool. But then sort of when I got like a little bit more involved in sort of selling NFTs was around DeFi summer. But even before that, because I had created sort of an Instagram art account, and just to kind of get my content out there, I had joined all these random Discords. And then so I joined a couple ones that were crypto art Discords. And at the time, I wasn't selling any NFTs, but I was just joining these Discords to sort of promote my work. So I would just drop the Instagram links in there, and then people would be like, how can I buy this? Because I wasn't selling them. So I actually had no idea what I was doing. It's just like, they probably just thought, who is this person who's always dropping Instagram links and they're just not selling NFTs? It doesn't make any sense. And then later on, then I actually discovered Rarible, and that you can actually, and this is sort of about when, and this was last summer, so about when Rarible was like kind of taking off. And then so I just as an experiment, like minted, like just like 3 pieces or something. And then I can't believe people actually bought them. So then I was like, wow, people actually want to buy my work. This is really cool. And then so that's kind of like how I got started, or which is like around last summer. And then it was sort of happening in conjunction with my whole like DeFi summer, where I was also making animations like in collaboration with DeFi protocols. But yeah, those two worlds kind of like didn't merge until the Uniswap V3 animation, where I was like, I can actually also, this could also be an NFT, like the animations that I was doing for the DeFi protocols. So, I mean, and that's like the only time that it happened so far. And so, yeah.
I'm Billy. I'm based in Berlin. I'm on the board of management at the Interchain Foundation, who are the stewards for the Cosmos Network. I'm the founder of Clover's Network, which is an NFT game that rewards the creation of scarce art. And I'm a founder / advisor to Folia app, which is a space for exhibiting and collecting NFTs. I first encountered NFTs or the concept while I was building an early version of Clover's Network back in 2017. I had sort of a proto version of it before the standard really existed, just as Clover's Network. And then I started hitting the hackathon route really hard to try to like share my work and try to see what people thought about this weird idea. And so I went to the very first ETH Global event, ETH Waterloo, where CryptoKitties launched, and it was really fun and exciting. And seeing the standard there sort of clicked after realizing like the limitations of ERC20 and being like, oh yeah, like if we all just use the same thing, so much more exciting things can happen. And so really just followed it from there, developed an EIP called Refungible Token, which is like a fractional ownership EIP. And my fun fact is that I'm the reason why ENS uses NFTs.
Also, fun fact, my Twitter profile is a Clover's.
Yes.
Yes, so I'm a big fan of a lot of your work. I'm a fan of everyone here. I've been following you guys on Twitter and everything beforehand. So just to start, I think for this panel, one of the greatest things is thinking about, there's a lot of conversations around NFT art and just like it selling and all these numbers, but kind of moving away from them and actually thinking like to inspire other people. I want to kind of talk about some of this unexpected or creative use cases in which NFTs that like people don't think about when they think about NFTs. And one of them is around this like interesting way to sell the NFT to fund something more positive or like a public good and so on. And we definitely want to go back to people pleaser on that one. But maybe Billy, I'd love for you to talk about this. You kind of bid for the tokenized Solidity code base for reserve auctions and like how selling code and what that meant also in an NFT. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, that was a really fun experience, almost a coincidence. So my involvement in Folia is mostly like nights or weekend. When I was first talking to a friend about it, I was like, from a technical point of view, it's not very difficult, but from like a social point of view, like, you know, this was founders who have been involved in like traditional art world, like getting art people interested in crypto and getting crypto people interested in legacy art. Like that's a problem that like I'm going to leave to you. But technically, you know, I'll help out, whatever. The tech hasn't changed in the last couple of years. And so we were talking about building a reserve auction contract for a little while. And it was the exact same weekend that Bounty on Mirror posted this bounty, like somebody want to build a reserve price auction? And it was just like, absolutely. So dove into it really fast. They were really responsive. The team over there is great. I know some of the people there already, but you know, iterated on it a couple times. They deployed it really quickly. Definitely got some help from them polishing the final code, but ended up launching it and yeah, selling this code base as an NFT, which was, I guess, the first of its kind. I mean, it's not like it's trying to take the IP angle where, you know, ownership of it gives you rights to the code in some way, but there was this really sort of like nice iterative thing that is happening over at Mirror that I think they're doing a great job of, which is like stuff around like party DAO, you know, almost like flash DAOs, you know, hey, let's all get together on this like really specific topic purpose. What happens if we all just like band together really quickly to do something cool? And having an NFT sort of encapsulate that activity, I think is really great, and also provides a lot of interesting next steps for that collective activity. You know, the reselling of the NFT, proceeds of that NFT, collectively management, the funds. There's a lot of cool things that happen from there.
And speaking of DAOs coming together, I mean, people pleaser, you've also been, a lot of your work kind of connects back to kind of giving back with the stands with Asians and the autism, like tell us more a little bit about your experience with like your work, NFTs, and this kind of funding explosion that has happened.
Sure. So sort of the concept of selling NFTs to give back really came from, I read a tweet from Chao Wang back in the day, and it really sort of resonated me. Basically, he said that if you made a lot of money trading assets in 2020, just know that, and he's like, I speak this as an investor trader myself, that you're not really contributing much to society, but if you want to brag, you should brag about how you've helped people financially. And so that really, when I read that, really resonated with me. Not that I made a lot of money in 2020 or anything, but I make, a livable income just from my collaborations in general. And there's around about, like obviously before I was selling NFTs, but they were, I had never done an auction before. So I was just selling them for pretty cheap. Like I would just put like less than 1 ETH or something. And it wasn't really like on the top of my mind, but I had always thought that, oh, it'd be cool if one day, maybe I could do like a charity auction or something. And so obviously when the whole NFT explosion happened, I did see it as sort of like, it's like a superpower to, because it is something that is only happening to a very, very small group of select artists, that they're able to sell a piece, that's going for hundreds of thousands of, just a lot of money, right? And I thought, what if we can sort of use that superpower for a distribution of funds, instead of, because a lot of the media as well was very focusing on like me, and how much money can I make? And, I was not like super hot about that narrative. And so it just sort of in my mind kind of like came together. Well, this Uniswap thing had, I poured my heart and soul into it. It was a very special piece for me. And then also I knew that there were going to be a lot of eyes on it. I could use this opportunity to really make a difference here. And so that's kind of where, everything sort of came together. And I thought that this would be, and I had never done an auction before. It was really scary. I didn't know how much it was gonna, end up going for. But yeah, I'm really glad that obviously the outcome way exceeded my expectations. And the whole thing where I guess my sort of like internet friends and fans came together to form a DAO was also really touching to me personally. And it also shows an alignment of all of our values together, that we all cared about making difference in the space, and also hopefully showing an example to other people as well, that first, you don't have to already be extremely famous to sell a piece for a lot of money. And second, you don't have to keep all of this money, obviously, if you're starving or something, then feed yourself first. But secondly, we actually just sort of finished the process of finalizing the grantees, and so you can actually find this on my Twitter. There's 24 charities so far that each received $25,000 grants, and then you can see what each of these charities stand for and what they're planning to do with the money. And I just think that it's really great to be able to directly see the kind of impact that this has, and that's a way that NFTs can totally positively affect the world around us. And this is something that myself and Pleaser DAO are very, very much aligned and hopefully can continue to do more of in the future.
I think that also kickstarted a lot of these DAOs that are kind of creating these collectives that say, they have a purpose and a meaning, and the purpose is to not just own the piece, but it's about how to like distribute some of these goods in a way and fund other things. So it's been amazing that you kind of opened that up for people. I think it really blew up, like starting from your work. And so maybe Molly, like, you've seen it with Filecoin as well. You guys are just kicking off with also kind of sponsoring this event as well. What are some of the kind of unexpected or creative, or just some of your favorite use cases of NFTs that you've seen?
I think my legit favorite one, which I haven't gotten to experience personally yet, but I hope to, is one that was actually an NFT hack a month or two ago, where you created a piece of art, and it was, I think, flamethrower something. So an art piece of art was created. There was a video of a flamethrower burning the piece of art, and that was recorded, and that is what was minted as the NFT, which I thought was great. And so that's my favorite so far, though I'm clearly gonna have to get Billy's cat, because that's phenomenal and I want to use that from now on. But yeah, I think one of the things that I'm really excited about, which I haven't seen happen yet, but I think is a really interesting opportunity. Kind of goes to what People Pleaser was saying around, not needing to lean on already being famous or already having a massive following in order to kind of see adoption of your work, or have this opportunity of reaching people and kind of distributing your NFTs and gaining awareness for a cause that you really care about. I think that's super meaningful. I have a couple of friends who are musicians and are not well known, but have art that like speaks to kind of ideas and missions that they really care about, and they're really excited about an opportunity, kind of the reverse of a DAO that's buying a single work, but more a collection of artists who are coming together and creating works around a theme or a mission or a cause, where then you have kind of a collection with a curator who's helping, think of an exhibition in a gallery or things like that, where you're bringing together the collective work of many artists. And so you could have like effectively DAOs on both ends around, a wider group of things, where you don't lean on one person's individual, like me brand, but you lean on like the collective sum of these works. And then kind of on the other hand, you have many people who are potentially, becoming fractional owners of that wider collection, or kind of visiting the space in which this collection, you're now experiencing this. And now you have three parties. You have the series of artists who are creating work. You have the curator who's helping bring together these works and kind of set them up for being like really meaningful to people, and exposing them to the concept or mission that's trying to be achieved. And then you have the group of people who's getting to experience that collection of art. And I think that's something that's really exciting and interesting. And I would love to see how the technology can evolve to support that as well. What are the things that we can create that make it easy for a curator to describe a series of works of art, a series of NFTs, make sure that, a community can fund that whole collection of NFTs instead of picking and choosing, and kind of redistribute the value kind of collectively across this collection, versus kind of the one-off auction model, which I think works and is kind of the first thing we've tried here, but I think there's a lot more opportunity for us to kind of explore other ways in funding this art. And so that's something that I haven't seen yet, but I'm really excited for groups that are, and I feel like having DAOs purchasing art is like the right next step in terms of exploring that wider space, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. You kind of touch upon like the next question I had, which is, this topic is called what is possible with NFTs. And sometimes when you go really wide, it's like anything. But sometimes it's interesting to think the opposite way, or think about some constraints that we have, and whether you're designing to push through those constraints or outside of those constraints. I'm curious to hear from everyone, like, what are some of the limitations to this NFT, either like creation or development as a process, or like what does the NFT world need but hasn't developed yet to kind of also inspire other people to produce and build and be part of this world?
The first thing that comes to mind that I feel like is really missing is a really solid NFT block explorer. I find myself using OpenSea as sort of a default block explorer to just like, what is the status of this NFT? What is the history? Where is the owner? Etherscan is like such a fantastic product in this space, and like what a true public good. But it really is lacking in terms of NFTs. So that often comes to my mind. But when it comes to like kind of the restrictions, I'm often like split in this perspective on NFTs, because on one side, yeah, they are everything, they enable anything. But on the other one, like they're just like an ISBN number. You know what I mean? They're literally just a unique ID on a publicly accessible registry. And like sometimes people get really tripped up of like, well, what is the NFT? Like, why is this JPEG matter or whatever? And it's like, it doesn't, but like, it does like technically change this one very, very small benign thing, which opens up like a really interesting possibility space. And when it comes to like the restrictions, I would actually like to see more restrictions actually in the way a lot of artists engage with the format. Something that we try to really support at Folia is like getting the artists to get a deeper understanding of what the technology does and why, and trying to sort of like see if the work can interact at a conceptual level with the format. So what does it mean to be transferable? What does it mean to be not transferable? How do you interact with like live code that changes over time, code that plays with time? So there's like a new piece coming out where it's a series of poems, but they're released on this schedule that's relevant to the content of the poems, but like the last one won't be available for 40 years. And, like this idea of like a blockchain is like forever, or like, etched in rock, like the auctions will continue to happen over the next 40 years. But now you're really like thinking about this work all of a sudden in this time frame, which becomes difficult to pull off in other contexts that you don't have like guarantees around time the way you do with distributed systems.
I think, yeah, I think that something that would be interesting is maybe, I'm not a technical person, but because currently, there's nothing that really sort of prevents, we're very much in terms of data storage reliant on platforms, right? Like, when I mint on OpenSea, that is stored on OpenSea, or if I mint on Foundation, then it's stored on Foundation. And would be cool to see if we could have something where it's a little bit more like, you mint separately or independently from the platform, and then the platform is more used like for a sale. But on separation of that, when you're minting an NFT, because of, related to this issue, if I'm minting on Foundation, then there's not technically nothing stopping me from minting the Uniswap v3 video again on Rarible or OpenSea or something. Obviously that would tarnish my reputation as an artist, but technically there's not anything that kind of prevents that. So what could be interesting to explore, which let me know if this just doesn't make any sense technically, but something that sort of either scans the metadata or detects whether or not each file is sort of identical. And then when it is, then it kind of like rejects that mint function because you're trying to mint the same file. And that if it's a one of one, then you shouldn't be doing that, right? So that is something that had been on my mind, and I feel like is probably, hopefully, something that we are exploring down the route as well. And it doesn't have to just apply to sort of like an MP4 file, but even like 3D models, like .obj files, anything that could exist on the metaverse or just an NFT form in general.
Kind of the space in which you want to use an NFT, kind of describing the qualifications for NFTs that are valid within that context. Because like, at a fungible level, like whenever you look at a particular image or video, like changing one pixel, changing like one piece of metadata technically makes it so that it's a different piece of content. But what you can do is you can lean on the platform, say like the video game or the gallery or the space in which you're kind of operating on those NFTs, the NFT block explorer or viewer of the future, to think about kind of which NFTs are like valid in that context. For example, something video game creators have to think about all the time is like, is a weapon or an artifact that you're bringing into that video game gonna like offset the balance that's like carefully crafted within that space in order to kind of enable everyone to play with each other. And so they're frequently finding like these OP, like overpowered items that then need to be like changed and updated. And so that's the sort of thing where you could think about an NFT itself describing the context or even those characteristics changing as it moves from space to space. And you could potentially use that as well to be like, well, this video is just a reproduction of another video that already exists. And so videos that are reproductions, we only the initial piece of art is kind of acceptable within this context, within this gallery, within this platform. And so I think there's an opportunity there to kind of lean on some of the potentially lean on the ways in which you'd view or interact with an NFT to kind of also encourage the proliferation of really new, exciting types of NFTs that differentiate themselves across platforms. Also, the one plus one kind of Billy's like, I think there's this awesome like explosion of content that's happened, and it's really amazing to see how people have been able to like fund all sorts of amazing artwork that previously it seems people were like, oh, it's digital. You don't pay for digital things. But as soon as kind of you put this opportunity for like a receipt or a timestamp and like purchase record on it, then suddenly like so much funding is able to flow into these artists and to these communities, which I think is really cool. And so I'd be curious to see how we can now make those accessible to people, see if there's other things within the kind of engaging people in kind of performative art or kind of interaction style NFTs. Like this experience that changes over time thing sounds so cool. Like there's a lot of opportunity there for like whole communities to engage with an NFT and influence its evolution over time. That also seems like a really interesting area that I'm sure some people are exploring already.
Yeah, we didn't get to the NFT piece, or generative piece, which I would have loved to expand on so much in the change of state. But unfortunately, that's sort of time's up for us. And I don't know if we still have time for Q&A, but I would.
We could definitely go over. We got 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, actually.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Well, can we talk back on this generative piece? That's the piece I think, Billy, you've also worked on. Molly, you kind of touched upon as well. The question I had was like this idea of the influence of like code and art and its relationship with each other, and the code sometimes creating the art and you co-creating as like a human process. Maybe Molly or Billy, do you want to expand on any of those ideas?
I mean, the thing that I think would be super cool, and I am not actually an NFT creator, so I'm not making this exist, but did a lot of theater growing up, and think there's kind of a really cool opportunity for kind of communities interacting with kind of a performative art piece together, where their actions kind of like improv influence the evolution of an NFT. So I think there could be a really interesting opportunity around NFTs that grab like data from the wider world or suggestions from their collective DAO owners over time in order to actually kind of change the course of that NFT or influence that world. You kind of think about, as thinking of this as the primitives for creating the metaverse. A really important thing there is kind of object permanence. When you add a teapot, that teapot is now part of that world and it sticks around for the future people who are interacting with that space. And so having NFTs that are kind of evolutionary in that way, and that you can add and build out more content to them. I mean, I'm sure Decentraland is pushing, they have their land NFTs, but you could also think about them building up more pieces of the virtual world as kind of meta NFTs and meta NFTs, where we're talking about like larger and larger collections of other NFTs as like units you can also address and evolve. I think that'd be a really interesting space, but I'm still brainstorming here.
NFTs can be utilized as sort of like functional aspects of different ways. So access tokens, combining different things. But when you talk about like generative work, one of the things that really resonates for me is that like at its core, I think NFTs are interesting in the history of art as an extension of conceptual art. It's even if you think about digital work itself as an extension of conceptual work, it's explicit code that represents the concept sometimes, and sometimes the concept itself isn't very like illuminating. The concept is these pixels and this arrangement, but it opens up sort of a much richer space of saying like, cool, the thinginess of this digital thing is being represented by this very concrete technology, the NFT, but then the work itself is actually much larger than any specific representation of that work. It's maybe it is an image in its most sort of concrete thing, but maybe it's actually the source of the image. Maybe it's the fact that that image has been reproduced. Maybe it's who created it, when they created it, and why. So even in this idea of like, don't let somebody mint the same image, there's a rich history of conceptual artists who do complete reproductions of artworks, but the fact that they did that reproduction in this context makes it a completely like new work for an interesting way. And like, when I think about generative works, that's getting actually like really explicit about the concept. The concept is the work looks like this under these conditions, and like run this software to sort of enact and enable and see the results of my concept for an artwork. And I'm not creating a specific work, but I'm actually creating an entire design space. And within that space, there's all these different possibility and possible outcomes, depending on when it was generated, how it was generated, the random number generator, et cetera. but you know, it's like I think an extreme step forward for, you know, an area of art that has, you know, very rich history, but it's really, you know, blossomed into this space. And I think that that convergence of those ideas of conceptualism as well as like software as concept really has like found its form with NFTs. And it's why I think we see stuff like art blocks being really successful and a lot of the larger generative series being, you know, really resonating with the audiences, because it hits in so many different angles.
Ellie, do you think it's possible yet to have something like Reddit Place on, like, as an NFT that's evolving, like, or are there things that we need to build, like technology that's missing in order to make it so that you could have, like, you know, a massive community where you're each owning a pixel, or not even owning it, like you get an opportunity to vote on what color that pixel should be on a, you know, a series of time, and we could have that sort of kind of evolving picture of the world and see what sort of crazy things we create.
I mean, we've got it in a lot of ways. There's another, what was that original like $1 million website where people, you know, bought pixels or something? There's a new version of that, which is NFT based. So that's collective drawing through like very discrete property ownership. There's a new project from Jody, which is an NFT that's generative, but it's based on the seed of the address of the person owning it. So the actual image constantly changes based on the conditions of its ownership. You know, there's not like something you can nail down, which is really nice. I mean, all sort of like massive online multiplayer organized games are starting to like merge with LARPs, you know, and you start having, you know, different aspects of it. And the line between where does the art start and stop, you know, comes really blurry, and it might involve NFTs in many places along that way. But you're right that I don't think that we've seen anywhere near the end of the possibilities there.
Can we talk about use cases of NFTs that are not art related, and kind of what does that world look like? And there's a lot of interesting ideas. Obviously, Billy talked about ENS being a really interesting example here. Just any comments or thoughts on that as a category?
I can talk a little bit about the like DeFi side as well, because we do have NFTs in this like really interesting. We talk about liquidity positions using Uniswap, not the animations themselves, but the positions being NFTs themselves. And at Maker, we just onboarded something called real world assets, where these NFTs represent certain like loans or aspects of assets, and therefore then you can put out a loan. So it's not just art itself, but it's sort of like a tool, like I still can't figure out like what the word is, but it's like an asset that holds a lot of these other things of value. And it's not necessarily about the NFT being valuable itself. It's about what's inside the NFT or what it represents.
One of the compounding effects and interesting aspects of blockchain themselves is this idea of composability. You know, there's an agreed standard, there's a common API, and you know, NFTs are exactly that. It's a common API. And so it actually doesn't matter if it's art on one side or if it's a financial asset or if it's whatever. The fact is that you can reuse these same tools, reuse these same interfaces. You can build software that has expectations for how to interact with these things. As long as they follow these rules, then it'll work inside this new context. And that is really exciting for real world assets. I mean, exactly I guess the centrifuge is the example you're giving for the real world assets is the one that comes to my mind. You know, these invoices that can be now used for collateral. Again, at the end of the day, they're just ISBN numbers, but like, you know, it's great. An ISBN can represent a comic book or a novel. And like, it's great if you love novels and you want to talk about, you know, French literature or something like that, but like, it doesn't change the fact that libraries rule, and they work because ISBNs, you know, are able to like track where the books are and why or whatever. I mean, I guess books at large rule. I don't know what that claim would be exactly, but the other real world stuff that I'm really excited about, I mentioned briefly, is sort of access tokens. You know, things that become possible with Patreon memberships, almost like library cards, again, to reference libraries. You know, you end up not only being able to like pay for subscriptions, but you also get like a token that sort of shows, hey, I'm somebody who's paid the subscription 10 times. It's like putting a bumper sticker on the back of your car every time you like pay your dues to some, you know, nonprofit or organization that you want to show that you support. And then those things, of course, can be used, and we see them already being used for things like airdrops. You know, you have this paper trail of your interactions, how you work with different things, and the fact that they follow this API means that they can be used forever in the future in all these different ways that we haven't even thought of.
I want to add also IP, creative IP, And then I'll let people please.
No, I was just gonna say that I think that's super useful, and the fact that it is a shared API makes it like so that everybody is sort of following the same rules of the blockchain, but also useful in cases that people want to keep like souvenirs from music, art concerts, or music festivals, and so much of it is sort of in the physical form right now. Even small things like punch cards at your local cafe or something, which I lose all the time. So if there was a way to sort of like move all of that on chain, either through like POAP tokens or something, that would be extremely beneficial.
I think that's a really interesting thing, like where we start bridging the kind of online experience with the real world. Like there's all sorts of digital assets that actually encode real world objects. And I know a lot of people kind of are looking at, we already have NFTs for digital land. So can we have NFTs in realty or like in the physical space? There's one that I think is really would have been my answer to the question earlier around things that are trying to do really cool stuff. There's like Tree DAO, which plants trees for NFTs that are created, and then you can vote on like helping maintain the land and like how to help improve like the local environment ecology. It's like, that's amazing. That's so cool. And the interplay between the online like NFT space where, within the blockchain, folks are kind of making decisions as a group, and then the real world implications of the objects that those digital things point to, those things connecting, I think is also a really cool space folks are pushing.